There is a quiet kind of suffering that many older adults endure each morning alone, before the world wakes up. It's that tight stiffness in the knees, the ache in the hips, the struggle just to get out of bed, to stretch, to stand straight. If you've ever sat on the edge of your mattress, bracing yourself for the pain that greets you with the sunrise, this message is for you. I've spent 3 decades listening to people describe this feeling. Some call it rusty bones, others say it feels like their joints forgot how to move overnight. But medically, we know it as morning stiffness and pain, one of the earliest and most underestimated signs of systemic inflammation, joint degeneration, and metabolic slowdown in the aging body. It may seem harmless at first, a nuisance, something you shake off with a warm shower, but it is also your body whispering a deeper truth. Something is out of balance. Behind this stiffness lies a web of subtle changes as we age. The production of synovial fluid, that precious lubricant in your joints, begins to decline. Cartilage thins. Small inflammatory molecules, like cytokines, start circulating in greater numbers than messengers with a loud message. Your joints are under siege, but most dangerously, these messages are quiet, chronic, painless, until one day, they're not. In a landmark study published in the Journal of Gerontology, researchers found that over 62% of adults over 60 experienced joint stiffness, lasting more than 30 minutes in the morning. Of that group, the majority were later diagnosed with early osteoarthritis or inflammatory markers associated with metabolic syndrome. Let me pause and say this clearly. Your joints are not supposed to feel like this. Aging is not supposed to hurt. So what can we do? The first step is removing the firewood from the flame, and by that, I mean identifying what's quietly fueling the inflammation. Let's begin with food. Many people don't realize that their breakfast could be sabotaging their joints. Take processed meat, sausages, deli ham, even bacon. These are packed with nitrates, preservatives, and advanced glycation end products, AGEs, compounds known to trigger joint inflammation. One patient of mine, Henry, 67, used to start every day with bacon and toast. His knees ached by 10 a.m., like clockwork. After we removed processed meats from his mornings and replaced them with anti-inflammatory oats, his pain dropped by half within 6 weeks. Then there's sugar. Innocent-looking pastries or sweetened coffee can spike insulin, which is a pro-inflammatory hormone when elevated chronically. A 2021 study in arthritis and rheumatology showed that individuals who reduced added sugar by just 25 grams per day had significantly lower levels of C-reactive protein, CRP, a major inflammatory marker linked to joint pain. Now, let's talk movement or the lack thereof. Some patients believe rest is the best remedy for pain. But in reality, inactivity is a silent killer of mobility. Overnight, the body lies still. Synovial fluid thickens. Collagen fibers in the joints begin to stiffen, like forgotten rubber bands. Gentle movement in the morning, such as Tai Chi, water walking, or even 5 minutes of stretching can begin to re-oil the hinges. Remember, motion is lotion for aging joints. Of course, not all movements are equal. High-impact workouts, such as running on pavement or lifting heavy weights without guidance, can accelerate joint wear. For those with chronic stiffness, I advise moderation and smart design. Use joint-friendly tools. Practice eccentric loading exercise where muscles lengthen under tension, which builds strength while protecting tendons. Prevention is strategy, not chance. What about alcohol and caffeine? While small amounts may seem harmless, they act as diuretics, reducing hydration and aggravating joint pain. A patient once said to me, "Doctor, I just have 1 glass of wine a night." But for her, even that was enough to disrupt sleep and worsen inflammation. After switching to chamomile tea, her pain dropped and her energy improved. Small changes, big wins. And here's something many overlook. Emotions live in the joints. It may sound strange, but we carry grief in our shoulders, resentment in our lower back, and fear in our hips. In traditional somatic therapy, stiffness isn't just physical, it's energetic. Just like Carl Jung once said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. When we hold on to stress, it hardens into muscle tension, which over time compresses joints. Learning to breathe, to forgive, to let go, it's medicine too. Speaking of letting go, let's talk about moderation. Certain foods like tomatoes, eggplant, or peppers belong to the nightshade family, which contain solanine, a compound that can trigger joint pain in sensitive individuals. Not everyone reacts, but for those who do, removing them can feel miraculous. One patient, Mrs. L., 70 years old, used to experience swollen fingers each morning. After cutting out nightshades, she regained the ability to crochet again. Her joy was back. Her freedom returned. So how do we navigate this complex puzzle of diet, exercise, emotion, and age? It begins with awareness. The body isn't broken, it's brilliant. Every creak, every stiffness is a message that you still have time, that healing is possible, that your joints are not a curse but a compass. They are showing you the way home. So, the next time you wake up and feel that stiffness again, don't just ask, why me? Ask instead, what is my body trying to tell me today? Because maybe, just maybe, that morning ache is not the end but the beginning of something wiser. There's a quiet heartbreak that often goes unnoticed in the lives of older adults until it becomes unbearable. It's not pain. It's not illness. It's waking up exhausted after a full night in bed. You turn off the light at 10 p.m., eyes heavy, body weary. But at 2 a.m., you're awake, again at 4:30. And by 6 a.m., when the world expects you to rise and shine, your body feels like it never truly rested. As a physician who has walked with patients through the journey of aging for over 3 decades, I can tell you this: sleep is the most sacred medicine we ignore. When the body stops sleeping deeply, it begins to forget how to repair, how to regulate, and how to reset. Sleep disruption in older adults is more than a nuisance, it's a sign of hormonal dysregulation, nervous system imbalance, and often unresolved emotional patterns that rise to the surface when the conscious mind goes quiet. As the great physician and writer Dr. Andrew Weil once said, insomnia is a symptom, not a disease, and often, it's the first whisper of deeper imbalances. Let's go beneath the surface. Biologically, the aging brain produces less melatonin, the hormone that regulates our circadian rhythm. It also becomes more sensitive to stress hormones like cortisol, which, when elevated at night, keeps the body in a state of hypervigilance. It's like trying to fall asleep while someone quietly drums a snare in the background. You may not notice it consciously, but your nervous system does. In a 2020 meta-analysis published in Sleep Medicine Reviews, researchers found that fragmented sleep in adults over 65 was strongly associated with increased markers of systemic inflammation, including IL-6 and TNF-alpha, the very same molecules that contribute to chronic fatigue, cognitive fog, and joint pain. So when you wake up tired, it isn't just part of getting older. It's your immune system stuck in the on position, even while you sleep. And the problem isn't just the sleep we lose, it's the healing we miss. Deep sleep is when the brain performs glymphatic clearance, a powerful detoxification process that flushes out waste, including beta amyloid, a protein linked to Alzheimer's disease. Interrupted sleep means less flushing, more buildup, and a brain that begins to feel slow, heavy, disoriented. It's no wonder many of my patients confuse sleep deprivation with early dementia. So what disrupts this vital rest? Often, it begins with the foods we eat too late. Heavy, greasy dinners force the body to stay in digest mode long after lights out. Alcohol, a deceptive sedative, may help you fall asleep quickly, but it fragments REM sleep and causes you to wake more frequently. A patient once told me, "Doctor, I only drink 2 glasses of red wine at night, it helps me sleep." But when we replaced it with warm almond milk and magnesium, her dreams returned, and her mornings became less painful. There's also the overlooked stimulant, blue light, our screens, phones, TVs, tablets emit wavelengths that trick the brain into believing it's midday. Melatonin release is suppressed. The pineal gland becomes confused, and sleep becomes shallow, erratic. I often say to patients, if your phone sleeps next to you, your brain won't. One of the most powerful changes you can make: build sleep rituals. The brain craves rhythm. Like children, our nervous system responds to consistency. A darkened room, a warm shower, soft music, breathing exercise. These are not luxuries. They're tools to signal the body, it's time to surrender, it's time to heal. Here's a powerful image I often share with patients. Imagine your mind as a snow globe. During the day, it's shaken, thoughts swirling, emotions floating. But when you put the globe down and let it rest, the snow begins to settle. That stillness, that's where restoration lives. That's what deep sleep provides. And sometimes, the key isn't in what you add but what you remove. One of my elderly patients, Mr. Thompson, used to wake 5 times a night. He thought it was just age. But when we removed caffeine after noon, swapped his evening news habit for light reading, and practiced 10 minutes of diaphragmatic breathing, he began sleeping 6 hours uninterrupted for the first time in a decade. His posture improved, his mood lifted, his sense of humor returned. And isn't that what health is for? Let's not forget the psychological layers of sleep. For many older adults, nighttime is when memories resurface, regrets, losses, the fear of mortality. These thoughts are not wrong, but they are heavy, and when unprocessed, they become barriers to rest. Jung once said, "Who looks outside, dreams, who looks inside, awakens." In this context, healing sleep is an invitation to both dream and awaken, face what haunts you, and lay it to rest. This is why I often encourage my patients to journal before bed. Empty the mind onto the page. Speak to your subconscious. Ask, what do I need to let go of tonight? The answers are never wrong. Now, a word of caution. Not all natural remedies are safe for everyone. For instance, valerian root and certain melatonin supplements can interact with heart medications. That's why personalized guidance matters. Sleep is a prescriptionally individual, deeply sacred. So, if you've been waking up tired, foggy, resentful of the clock, know this. It doesn't have to be this way. Your body remembers how to rest. Your cells know how to repair. Sometimes, they just need the noise to quiet down long enough to remember. And if you've ever sat in the darkness at 3 a.m., wondering if something is broken inside of you, let me ask, what if your body isn't broken at all but simply asking you to listen deeply? Before morning comes, there was a time, maybe not so long ago, when your morning started with purpose. Maybe it was your garden, or your walks with the neighbor's dog, or that Sunday jazz station you never missed. Small joys, everyday rituals, simple things that made you feel alive. But lately, I hear something different. Doctor, I don't know why. I just don't feel like doing anything anymore. And it's not because of pain. Not exactly. It's not because of depression, though sometimes that's hiding underneath. It's something subtler, like a light dimming slowly across a room. You don't notice the darkness until you squint to see. This quiet withdrawal, this disinterest in things you used to love, is not just a change in mood. It's a biological and emotional signal, a health sign I pay close attention to. And after 30 years of listening to stories from older adults, I've learned that it almost always precedes deeper shifts in the body, especially in metabolism, inflammation, and cognitive health. From a clinical perspective, we now know that chronic low-grade inflammation, a condition scientists call inflammaging, is deeply tied to apathy and fatigue. A 2019 study published in the Journals of Gerontology found that elevated levels of CRP, C-reactive protein, and O-6 were strongly associated with a decline in motivation and pleasure in older adults, even without full-blown depression. Simply put, when your body is inflamed, your soul feels tired. And then there's the mitochondria, tiny power plants inside every cell. As we age, their energy output decreases. But the decline is not just physical. A loss of cellular energy affects how we think, how we move, and how we feel emotionally connected to life. You may not know your mitochondria by name, but you certainly feel them when you're too drained to care. I remember a patient named Lorraine, 74. She was sharp, funny, independent, a watercolor artist. But over the course of a year, her brushes dried, her piano collected dust, and her smile, it faded. She came to me not because she was in pain, but because she had quietly stopped living. After some careful testing, we found that Lorraine's B12 levels were dangerously low, and she had mild thyroid imbalance. With targeted treatment, nutritional shifts, and a return to walking outdoors, her light returned. One afternoon, she mailed me a small painting of a sun breaking through clouds. On the back, she wrote, "Thank you for helping me find the color again. Now let's talk about how to respond to this sign." The first step is to notice without judgment. Aging is not a failure. Slowing down isn't weakness. But a sustained lack of interest in life is never just normal aging. It's your body's version of a smoke alarm. Soft at first, but persistent. Next, we must look at fuel. Many older adults unintentionally slide into a poor nutrient, high inflammation diet. Highly processed foods, refined sugars, low protein intake will contribute to energy crashes and neurotransmitter depletion. Foods like salmon, walnuts, leafy greens, and turmeric don't just nourish your body, they fuel dopamine and serotonin, the brain's feel-good messengers. And don't underestimate the power of social contact. I'm not talking about large gatherings. I'm talking about connection. A neighbor who says good morning, a letter to a friend, a conversation with a grandchild. These small acts awaken dormant parts of the brain, particularly the default mode network, which lights up when we reflect on ourselves and others. It's why so many feel better after a phone call, even when they swore they didn't want to talk. But perhaps the most important tool in this stage is purpose. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, once said, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." Purpose is not a job title or a calendar full of activities. It's the feeling that you still matter, that your presence has weight, that you still leave footprints when you walk. For some, this purpose is caregiving. For others, it's storytelling, teaching, cooking, creating beauty. The key is to start small. Re-engage with one thing you used to love, even if only for 5 minutes. And if that's too much, just sit with it. Look at the paintbrush, touch the piano keys, smell the soil in your garden. The body remembers, and the memory itself is a spark. And let's not forget the symbolic layer. In myth, a withdrawn figure is not lazy, it is often the wise one retreating into the cave, before returning with insight. In medicine, I've learned to respect these inward phases, but not to let them last too long. Because light, once dimmed, needs tending before it goes out. One of my favorite metaphors comes from nature. The sunflower doesn't bloom because it wants to impress. It blooms because it turns toward the Sunavan on days when the clouds are thick. What if your job right now isn't to be vibrant every moment but simply to turn toward what gives you warmth? So, if you found yourself stepping back from life, not out of rest, but resignation, let me ask you, what's one small thing that once brought you joy? And are you ready to hold it in your hands again, just for a moment? We often think of pain as something dramatic, a sharp stab, a twisting agony, something that demands attention. But in my decades as a geriatric physician, I've come to fear a quieter kind of pain, the dull, persistent ache in the joints, the kind that creeps into your knees as you climb stairs, that stirs in your shoulders when reaching for a plate, that haunts your hands when you button your shirt. It's the pain that whispers, not screams. And it's easy to dismiss. It's just age. Everyone my age has this. But let me tell you a secret that your joints wish they could say aloud. This kind of chronic pain is not inevitable. It is not just age. It is inflammation, and it is a sign. You see, joints are not just hinges of the body. They are living, dynamic systems. Inside each joint is a delicate symphony of cartilage, synovial fluid, and immune regulation. But when this balance is disrupted by poor diet, lack of movement, excess weight, or even stress, the inflammation begins, slowly, insidiously. A landmark study in arthritis and rheumatology, 2018, revealed that even mild, untreated joint inflammation can accelerate cartilage breakdown by over 30% in just 1 year. In adults over 60, that's not just science cites your morning stiffness getting worse, your nightly sleep disrupted, your ability to enjoy walks or gardening slipping away, quietly. And it's not just about pain. Chronic joint inflammation is a canary in the coal mine for wider metabolic issues. In fact, we now know that osteoarthritis and rheumatoid arthritis are closely linked with metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, and even cognitive decline. Why? Because systemic inflammation doesn't stay in the knees, it travels, it spreads, it signals a body that is no longer clearing toxins effectively, that is overreacting to small injuries, that is, quite literally, burning from within. I remember Charles, a former jazz musician in his 80s. He came in not because he couldn't play saxophone anymore but because it hurt too much to hold the instrument. His knees were swollen, yes, but more than that, his spirit had dimmed. "Doc, I feel like I'm rusting," he said. After tests, we discovered his CRP levels were elevated, and he had an omega-3 deficiency. We made a few changes, eliminated processed seed oils, added turmeric and omega-3 south, switched him to a Mediterranean-style anti-inflammatory diet. We also introduced light aquatic exercise and gentle joint mobilization. 3 months later, he brought in his sax, played a tune, not for me but for himself. So, how do we respond when our joints begin to whisper or shout? Start with what not to do. Avoid refined carbohydrates, especially white bread, pastries, and sugar-laden drinks. These spike blood glucose and trigger inflammatory cytokines like TNF-alpha and IL-1. Skip processed red meats and fried foods, high in advanced glycation end products AGEs, which are like little sparks of oxidative chaos inside your joints. Stay wary of alcohol and excessive caffeine. They may aggravate fluid imbalance and inflammation in susceptible individuals. And don't fall into the trap of total rest. Immobility is the enemy of healing joints. Movement, gentle, intentional, low-impact movement is medicine. Think Tai Chi, think swimming, think stretching while listening to your favorite music. Your joints, like a garden gate, need to be opened often, or they will rust shut. But more than this, let's talk why it hurts. On the cellular level, Chronic inflammation increases reactive oxygen species ROS in the synovial fluid, reducing hyaluronic acid's lubricating function. The cartilage becomes thinner. The immune cells, especially macrophages, start misfiring, releasing matrix metalloproteins that chew through your joint lining like termites through old wood. This is not just a nuisance, it's a molecular fire, and if left unchecked, it burns through your independence. Now let's add a layer of metaphor, because sometimes the soul understands symbols better than science. In mythology, the serpent often represents transformation. It sheds its skin to grow. But in chronic joint pain, we forget to shed. We hold onto habits that inflame us: foods, behaviors, even emotional tension. The body tightens, the spirit stagnates. In clinical practice, I've noticed something powerful. Patients who begin to move again even through painful experience an emotional shift, as if loosening the joint also loosens a knot inside the heart. Maybe that's because healing is never just physical. Maybe the joints hold more than cartilage. Maybe they hold memory, fear, hope, and release. So if your joints have been aching, quietly or loudly, I offer you this. The pain is not your enemy. It is your signal, a flare on the shoreline, an invitation to reassess how you're living, eating, and moving. And perhaps more profoundly, what if the pain in your joints isn't just something to silence but something asking to be heard? There's a particular kind of fatigue I've learned to pay close attention to. Not the kind that comes after gardening or walking too long. No, I mean the kind of tired that lingers after a full night's sleep. The exhaustion that isn't fixed by rest. The weariness that wraps around your spirit like a wet blanket, even when you haven't done much at all. I remember an older patient once telling me, "Doctor, it feels like someone unplugged me. I'm charging, but the battery never fills." That kind of tiredness isn't about laziness. It's not about age. It's metabolic. Unexplained fatigue in older adults is often the earliest and most overlooked warning sign that your internal enganeth mitochondria, the hormonal system, the glucose regulators are sputtering. Like a car idling rough, the body starts to lose efficiency, waste energy, and create inflammation. And yet, because there's no fever, no dramatic symptom, many people brush it off. But here's the truth I need you to hear. Fatigue is not just a feeling. It's a metabolic distress signal. Let's start with your thyroid, a small gland with mighty power. When thyroid hormones drop, your body's ability to regulate temperature, burn calories, and maintain energy levels plummets. Even subclinical hypothyroidism, common in adults over 60, can lead to profound fatigue, brain fog, and depression. Then there's mitochondrial dysfunction. These tiny power plants in your cells are responsible for converting food into usable energy. But with age, oxidative stress builds up. The mitochondria begin to falter, producing less ATP. You eat, you rest, but your body doesn't ignite. It's like pouring gas into a car with broken spark plugs. Studies published in the Journals of Gerontology 2021 found that older adults with high levels of fatigue also had increased markers of systemic oxidative stress, lower COQ-10 levels, and poor metabolic flexibility. These aren't vague ideas, they're measurable, targetable, and reversible. What does this mean practically? Start by looking at your diet. Sugary breakfasts, ultra-processed snacks, and meals heavy in refined carbs are notorious for causing blood sugar roller coasters, leading to midday crashes and low-grade inflammation. Swap them out for protein-rich options and foods rich in B vitamins, magnesium, and antioxidants like spinach, eggs, chia seeds, and wild blueberries. Address your sleep hygiene, but understand that it's not just about sleep quantity, but sleep quality. Poor sleep in older adults often stems from misaligned circadian rhythms, excess screen time, or even hidden sleep apnea. A patient of mine named Evelyn, aged 72, used to nap constantly during the day. Turned out, she had undiagnosed sleep apnea and borderline insulin resistance. After treatment, she began volunteering again, saying, "I feel like I woke up from a fog that lasted years." Let's also not ignore emotional weight. Chronic fatigue is often a body's grief made physical. It is the inertia of unprocessed life events, disappointments, or changes we haven't digested. In this way, fatigue becomes not just a symptom, but a message. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely," and sometimes, fatigue arises not from the body alone, but from resisting the call of inner transformation. Your body is tired because your soul is asking for change. So how do we break the fatigue cycle? In small, deliberate steps. Start with hydration. Mild dehydration can reduce energy by 1020% without you noticing. Add gentle movement in the morning to spark mitochondrial function. Tai Chi, stretching, even leg dancing to your favorite music. Support your mitochondria with CoQ10, L-carnitine, and alpha-lipoic acid. After consulting with a healthcare provider, and perhaps most important, begin asking deeper questions. Are you living in alignment with your true needs? Are there unresolved emotional weights sapping your vitality? Are you nourishing not just your body, but your meaning? Because energy is not just biochemical, it's existential, and restoring it often means returning to what enlivens you, not just what feeds you. So when you feel exhausted again tomorrow morning, even after a full night's sleep, could it be your body's quiet way of asking for more than rest? Could it be asking for renewal?